All right, we've got a day to celebrate today. I love this one. It's National Lost, try it again. National Lost Sock Memorial Day. Yeah, what happens to those socks? Where do they go? And when do you finally call it quits and say, okay, the mate's not coming back? Anyway, there's one day for you to celebrate here on a Friday. How about we celebrate how markets traded in the overnight session? Let's start with the corn market. Is it something to celebrate? And I think you could say yes, and this is after 4 consecutive closes lower, the overnight session higher. Does that signal we could see higher trade in corn today? Well, December 3 1/4 higher, 442. Soybean trade in the overnight session before we get over to Brian Hoops. November 10.27 3/4, up 2 3/4 cents. Wheat market will hit these quickly. July 5.30, up 3/4 cent. Kansas City, 1.25 higher, 5.26. Spring wheat, how about a 3/4 cent higher, 6.30 3/4. Cotton market in the overnight session was 18 lower, 68.57. And yesterday, kind of a record day for cattle. June live cattle, $1.72 higher, 214 1/4 in the record really here. August going 301 1/4, up 265 on the feeders. And then the hog trade yesterday was mixed with June, down 15, 97.17. Deferreds were higher. Threw out a bunch of numbers for the president of Midwest Market Solutions, Brian Hoops. Hey, Brian, let's kind of work our way through this. And let's start with the row crops. Thoughts there?
Yeah, good morning, Tony. Had a couple more private sales this morning. 288,000 metric tons of corn sold to Mexico. So back-to-back sales days of corn to Mexico. Also 120,000 soybeans sold to Pakistan. They bought beans yesterday, bought some more this morning, and should support us fairly well as we go into the weekend. There's also some tweets from President Trump. Once again, he is willing to lower the tariff rate from 145% against China down to 80% ahead of the tariff talks that are being held in Beijing. So I don't know that people are going to want to be pushing the short side of the market here ahead of Monday's WASDE reports, ahead of the weekend, where another tweet from the White House could give us higher prices or some sort of a trade agreement, or who knows what happens. I think you've pushed, especially the corn market, pushed it down far enough here now. We are stimulating a lot of demand. It's going to have to be reflected in upcoming supply and demand reports. And we're likely to see, I think, at least some sort of a rally here going into the weekend and ahead of Monday's WASDE reports.
Hey, Brian, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I saw that flash sale overnight, I thought USDA messed up. It's the same two from the previous day, Mexico and Pakistan, but this was in fact another one. And before we get over and start talking about WASDE, how about that record day in the cattle market, finally doing the 300 and settling above 300 in the feeders?
Yeah, it's a historic day. And, we've been talking for a long time about the tightest supplies of the year being in the second quarter of this year. Well, we're in the second quarter. The supplies are tight, and this is a supply-led type market. Now, cutout values have come up a little bit this week. The cash market's sharply higher. We ended anywhere from $5 to $10 better on a dress basis and 3 to 5 on a live basis this week. Calls again for next week, still higher. They're just not a supply that's rebounding, or we just can't rebuild that supply fast enough. And it's just a supply type market. So, I've heard from clients that are feeding out these cattle heavier and heavier weights and holding on to them, but it's so expensive to try and replace these cattle. They feel they're better off feeding these cattle out a little bit longer, adding weights, because the cash markets are rewarding them to do that. And that's what they're going to continue to do at this point. I don't think we're going to see a big drop in the cash markets. We'll probably see some profit taking or some sort of a dip or correction in the markets at some point. But, the cash markets, the fundamentals still remain very strong.
And one other benefit of feeding them out a little longer in the feedlot is we're actually finding that they're grading a little better than normal as well. So I guess there's a side benefit there. Okay, Brian, before we pick up our conversation and carry on about the WASD, how about we take a break and we'll come back and dig into what the expectations are for that report on Monday. Market Day report continues in a moment. So coming up on Monday, a World Ag Supply Demand Estimates report. And one of the things that will affect that is the strength of our dollar. How about we look at that dollar right now, and we're back up above 100. Now, we backed off a bit from the high on the session, but still need to keep an eye on that. Let's bring back in Brian Hoops, president of Midwest Market Solutions. And Brian, let's really talk now about that WASD report on Monday. What are your thoughts coming into that?
So this will be the first numbers of WASD report of this growing season where we have 2025-26 ending stocks and production for corn and soybeans. We're pretty much going to mirror what the Outlook Forum told us for ending stocks and for yield and that sort of thing. There could be some changes, though, in the old crop balance sheets. Now, last month, the USDA tightened corn balance sheets more than expected because they finally raised corn exports by about 100 million bushels. They're still not close to what the forecasts are running, to what the actual sales are running. Our inspections have been red hot. Our sales on a weekly basis have been red hot. We just reported a couple more sales. Part of the sales this morning was for old crop, part for new. But these private sales that we're seeing, telling us as analysts, telling the USDA, you're still too low on your corn export forecast. They could be 100 million bushels too low yet. So I think they make some changes in that. The trade's only expecting about a 30 million bushel reduction in ending stocks. I think it could be quite a bit more than that on Monday when that WASD report comes out. It could be at least 50, maybe up to 100 million bushels. I guess we'll see. There's very little changes expected for old crop soybeans, maybe a small tightening of the basis. Old crop wheat, very little changes expected there. I think most of the fireworks is going to come in the corn market. And then we'll look at new crop ending stocks for wheat and for soybeans and for corn. And we should point out, a year ago at this time, USDA forecast about a 2.1 carryout for corn. And it's going to be closer to 1.4. So they really swung and missed last year. And a lot of the trade is thinking maybe they're going to have a big miss again this year.
Brian, thanks for the insight there. We're just Monday at 12 noon Eastern time is when USDA releases that, 11 o'clock Central. So we'll talk to you one more time before then. Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions, here on a Friday.
All right. Thanks so much, Tony.